In a small southern mining town where the red clay roads cracked under a relentless sun and the air always shimmered with dust and whispered secrets, life moved slowly yet carried heavy burdens. The town's narrow streets wound between time-worn wooden houses, each with peeling paint and memories that clung like the persistent coal dust from the nearby mines. Here, every face was familiar, every story intertwined in a tapestry of hope and hardship. In this fragile world lived Emily, a kind, determined woman whose gentle smile belied the strength forged by years of caring for others. Emily's childhood was steeped in both tenderness and hardship. Growing up at the edge of a close-knit black community, she witnessed her mother's quiet miracles, tending to neighbors' wounds with calloused, caring hands and murmuring soft prayers to soothe both body and soul. The scent of magnolias mixed with the acrid tang of coal smoke was as much a part of her upbringing as the laughter of children chasing each other on cracked sidewalks. These memories formed the foundation of Emily's character, a compassionate nurse at the local clinic, whose days were spent soothing the aches of miners and comforting families with tender care. In that dusty town, divisions ran as deep as the mine shafts. White families lived high on the hill in manicured yards and grand homes, while families like Emily's eked out an honest living on the outskirts, near the danger of the mines and the burden of societal prejudice. Yet, despite the injustice and inequality, Emily embraced her fate with quiet dignity. She never allowed bitterness to mar her tender heart. Instead, she found solace in the simple act of healing others. One fateful summer day at the town's annual festival, a rare burst of color and music amid the dust and drudgery, Emily's path was destined to cross with someone who would alter her world forever. Amid the throng of festival goers, where children raced barefoot over dusty fields and the strains of gospel choruses spilled from open church windows, Emily noticed a man whose eyes held both determination and a glimmer of gentle rebellion. His name was Thomas, an engineer working at the local mine, whose calloused hands and quiet confidence set him apart from the usual rugged laborers. Their meeting was unassuming. While Emily had taken a brief respite from her responsibilities at the clinic to enjoy the cool respite of the festival, fate had conspired to present her with a moment of compassion. An older woman, overcome by the oppressive heat, struggled on the fringes of the celebration. Without hesitation, Emily rushed to her side, urging her to sit and offering water and kind words. It was then that Thomas, who had been assisting as well, remarked in a soft, sincere tone, "You care, a rarity in this harsh world." Those words struck a chord deep within Emily, echoing the very essence of who she was. In that moment, amidst the laughter of children and the fading strains of a hymn, a quiet understanding passed between them, a promise of something greater than the daily grind of hardship. Their brief conversation lingered long after the festival had ended, and though neither spoke of destiny or fate, a seed was planted in their hearts. In a town where every life was shadowed by hardship, that encounter was a beacon of hope. Yet, beneath the shimmering promise of newfound love, the old town harbored secrets and a legacy of survival. Emily's heart, already weathered by loss and sacrifice, could scarcely imagine that in the quiet meeting of two souls, the greatest of all trials was silently preparing its stage, a trial that would eventually force her to confront both the light of hope and the darkness of betrayal. In that dusty, dream-filled town, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with hues of fire and sorrow, Emily's story had only just begun. The tender kindness of her actions, the legacy of a mother's love, and the subtle promise of Thomas's quiet words were all threads in a tapestry that would soon unravel into a tale of passion, secrets, and the unbearable weight of destiny. The summer festival's afterglow lingered in Emily's mind as the days turned to weeks. In the gentle warmth of early autumn, her life continued with quiet purpose, tending to patients, mending broken spirits, and nurturing hope among those who had little left to grasp. But fate had its own designs. Thomas, the soft-spoken engineer with eyes that held storms of determination and tenderness alike, began appearing at the clinic unannounced. His visits were never just about repairs or work. He lingered by the reception desk to exchange a few kind words, to ask after the well-being of the miners, and most importantly, to share moments of quiet conversation with a woman who had so effortlessly stirred something within him. Their exchanges were tentative at first, a smile shared in passing, a gentle inquiry about the hardships of the town, and silent acknowledgments of a deeper connection that neither dared to fully name. In a world sharply divided by class and color, their growing bond was an act of quiet rebellion. Thomas saw beyond the constraints imposed by a society that sought to pigeonhole him as just another cog in the mining machine. For him, Emily was not only a healer but also a beacon of hope, a reminder that love could blossom in the most unlikely of places. As the days lengthened and the chill of early winter began to settle over the town, their relationship deepened in earnest. Evening walks along the dusty paths became their cherished ritual, a time when the bustling world receded, leaving them alone beneath a canopy of stars. Under the wide, indifferent sky, they spoke of dreams that transcended the boundaries of their small town. Thomas confided his secret wish, a yearning to create a future free from the grinding despair of the mines, a future where security and legacy could be built upon a foundation of love and hope. Emily, too, dared to imagine a life where her gentle hands might craft not only healing but also a home of lasting warmth and belonging. Yet, their romance was not without its burdens. The unyielding judgment of a society steeped in prejudice cast a long shadow over their union. Whispers trailed behind them in the market, and curious eyes followed their every step. In the midst of such scrutiny, their love became both a sanctuary and a battleground, a space where tender vulnerability was met with the harsh reality of a divided community. Still, neither was deterred. For Emily, the act of loving Thomas was a defiance of the fate that had been so cruelly assigned to her. For Thomas, it was an affirmation that even in a world of dust and despair, the human spirit could rise like a phoenix from the embers of its past. Their clandestine meetings grew more frequent, each encounter weaving a tighter bond between them. They shared stolen moments behind the old stone well, exchanged secret letters folded neatly and hidden beneath loose floorboards, and met in the quiet corners of the town's dilapidated park where the scars of history seemed to vanish beneath the soft glow of twilight. In these moments, the barriers of race and class blurred, leaving only the raw, unspoken truth of their connection. One crisp evening, as autumn's breath turned the leaves to gold, Thomas and Emily sat side by side on a rickety porch, watching the horizon darken with the promise of night. Thomas took her hand, rough yet reassuring, and in a voice barely above a whisper said, "Let us show them, let us live our lives the way we want to." Those words, simple and resolute, would echo in both their hearts for years to come. They vowed not only to defy the prejudices of their world, but also to create a legacy founded on hope and perseverance. Little did they know that as their love grew stronger, so too did the hidden forces of destiny. Amid the gentle flutter of falling leaves and the quiet hum of life in a divided town, a secret treasure lay buried beneath the very land that sustained them, a secret that would one day unravel the tapestry of their carefully woven dreams. And so, in that moment of tender promise and whispered defiance, the seeds of a forbidden romance were sown, setting the stage for events that would forever alter the lives of everyone in their small dust-covered world. The promise of autumn melted into the chill of winter, and as the first frost glazed the red clay roads, Emily and Thomas's secret love flourished amidst quiet determination. In a modest ceremony held in the backyard of Emily's childhood home, a place where memories clung to every weathered beam and every delicate jasmine blossom, the two pledged themselves to each other. Their wedding was not a grand affair, rather, it was a gentle affirmation of love in defiance of a society that demanded conformity. Only close family and a handful of loyal friends bore witness to their union. On that crisp winter day, as the low sun cast long shadows across the yard, Emily stepped forward in a simple white gown that carried the soft scent of jasmine and hope. Though the church on the hill, resplendent and untouched by the hardships of the outskirts, was beyond her reach, the backyard became a sacred space where two hearts merged against all odds. Thomas, standing with a quiet pride and trembling anticipation, recited vows that spoke not of material wealth but of a deep, abiding promise, to build a future together, to share the burdens of the present, and to transform their dreams into reality. As the ceremony unfolded, there was an unspoken understanding that this union was both a rebellion and a refuge. Their vows were imbued with a bittersweet awareness of what they were forsaking, a life of silent suffering and societal constraint, in exchange for the warmth of shared hope. Thomas spoke of his dreams, of owning a small piece of land that would become their sanctuary, a place where every brick and beam would be laid not for vanity, but for the security of a legacy. Emily, with eyes glistening with both love and quiet determination, promised to nurture that dream with every ounce of her gentle strength. After the ceremony, as the newlyweds sat together beneath the fading winter light, their conversation turned to the practicalities of survival in a harsh world. The town's miners continued their ceaseless labor underground, and the promise of prosperity was as elusive as a distant star. Yet for Thomas and Emily, that day was not about immediate riches, it was about the courage to embrace a future free of fear, prejudice, and despair. The humble gathering, though modest, radiated an unyielding hope that dared to challenge the status quo. In the days and weeks that followed, the couple began building their new life from scratch. Thomas returned to the mine with a quiet resolve, every swing of his pickaxe driven by the vision of a better tomorrow. Meanwhile, Emily poured her love and care into the community, her healing touch a reminder that even in the darkest corners, compassion could kindle light. Together they made small plans, a modest house on a patch of land they could someday call their own, a future that would secure not only their survival but also a legacy of dignity and perseverance. Yet, as the couple nurtured their newfound happiness, fate was already laying its clandestine trap. Hidden beneath the very soil upon which they dreamed to build, a secret treasure lay waiting, a secret that would soon blur the line between blessing and curse. The gold that lay dormant within the earth was both a promise of wealth and a harbinger of turmoil, a temptation that would eventually drive a wedge into the fabric of their tender life. For now, though, the warmth of love and the gentle glow of hope outshone any dark omen. As the winter deepened and the town's shadows grew longer, Emily and Thomas clung to each other. In that small sacred backyard, where every whispered vow was a defiant act of love, they forged a bond that, despite the encroaching darkness, promised that even the humblest hearts could aspire to greatness. The quiet wedding, simple yet profound, became the cornerstone upon which a future of hope, sacrifice, and eventual heartbreak would be built. In the silent rhythm of daily life, the promise of a better future began to glimmer unexpectedly beneath the rugged soil of their modest plot of land. Thomas, whose calloused hands and determined spirit had carried him through years of back-breaking labor in the mine, had always dreamed of transforming their humble existence. Day after day, he returned home with the same quiet resolve, storing every extra dollar and imagining a day when their struggle would yield the security of a legacy. It was on an unusually clear afternoon, when the sky stretched out in an endless cloudless blue, that destiny made its fateful move. Thomas had taken to working a small piece of land at the edge of their property, hoping to reclaim even a fragment of freedom from the relentless grip of the mines. As he labored with his familiar rhythm, swinging his pickaxe, turning over soil, and searching for any hint of fortune, he paused and knelt beside a stubborn, oddly shimmering stone. At first glance, it appeared no different than the many unremarkable pebbles scattered among the red clay. But as the sun caught its surface, the stone glowed with a subtle brilliance. Thomas's heart pounded as he gently turned the stone in his calloused hand. The metal-like luster revealed itself to be not an ordinary rock, but a nugget of pure, gleaming gold. For a long, breathless moment, time seemed to stand still. The prospect of wealth, a secure future free from the oppressive grind of mine work, suddenly felt within reach. His mind raced with visions of a better life for him and Emily, a modest home built on their own land, a legacy of stability, and a promise of dignity that would forever cast aside the shadows of poverty. He hurried inside the modest dwelling, cradling the precious nugget as if it were a living thing. Emily, ever the nurturer, sensed the stirring in his eyes long before he spoke. When Thomas finally revealed the shimmering treasure, her initial wonder gave way to a complex mixture of awe and apprehension. "What does this mean?" she whispered, her voice trembling as if the very secret might shatter the fragile peace they had built. Thomas's reply was measured, though his own heart wrestled with the enormity of the discovery. "It means we have a choice," he said softly, his tone both hopeful and burdened with responsibility. In that moment, the nugget became much more than a symbol of material wealth. It embodied the possibility of transforming their lives. Yet, even as the gleam of gold promised prosperity, it also cast long foreboding shadows. For in the quiet recesses of the town's history, stories abounded of fortunes that had brought not salvation but ruin. Emily's mind filled with conflicting images, dreams of a secure future intermingled with the uneasy sense that some treasures carried a hidden curse. Together, they stared at the gold as if it held answers to unspoken questions. Thomas's eyes, usually so steady, flickered with uncertainty. Though the nugget could change everything, it also threatened to upend the delicate balance they had fought so hard to achieve. As evening fell, the couple sat in silence, the gold resting on the kitchen table between them, a silent reminder of both hope and danger. Outside, the wind whispered through the barren trees, and the old wooden house creaked as if burdened by secrets. Unbeknownst to them, this single discovery would soon ignite passions and suspicions that lay dormant within their lives, setting in motion events that would forever alter the course of their destiny. In that twilight hour, as the land embraced both promise and peril, Thomas and Emily made a silent vow to protect their newfound treasure. They would use it not as an end in itself, but as a means to secure a future built on love, dignity, and hard-won hope. Yet fate, ever capricious, was already stirring its dark designs. The hidden fortune, meant to be a beacon of promise, would soon become the seed of discord, a secret that, once unearthed, would challenge every bond and test the limits of a family's resilience. In the gentle glow of early spring, as new life began to push its way through thawing earth and hope stirred amid the remnants of winter's chill, Emily and Thomas welcomed the arrival of their only son, Mark. His first cries filled the modest home with a promise of renewal and joy, a stark contrast to the hardships that had long defined the town's existence. Mark's birth was celebrated quietly among family and friends, each smile and tear-wiped cheek a testament to the couple's enduring love. From the earliest days of his childhood, Mark sensed that his family's life was layered with unspoken truths. He watched as his mother's warm hands healed the wounds of the community and as his father's determined gaze often grew distant, lost in thoughts too weighty for words. Though he was too young to fully grasp the significance of the secret that lay buried beneath their land, the flicker of tension in hushed conversations and furtive glances exchanged between his parents sowed the seeds of quiet curiosity. As Mark grew into a bright and observant boy, the contrast between the world outside and the life within his home became increasingly apparent. In school, he learned of dreams and possibilities beyond the narrow confines of a mining town, yet at home he encountered silent battles fought behind gentle smiles and measured words. His mother, ever patient and kind, always insisted that true wealth was found in love and compassion, while his father carried a secret that shimmered like gold, a promise of escape from poverty but also the threat of unforeseen ruin. At first, Mark's questions were innocent, a child's curiosity about a treasure his father guarded so jealously, or the strange, half-whispered references to a fortune hidden in the earth. But as he entered adolescence, the spark of inquisitiveness turned into a burning need for truth. He began to notice small details, the way his father's eyes clouded when he glanced at the old wooden chest in the attic, the furtive smiles exchanged between his parents when he was not present, and the almost sacred reverence with which his mother spoke of the past. One evening, while the house was quiet and the only sound was the soft hum of the wind against the windows, Mark overheard a fragment of conversation that sent shivers down his spine. In hushed voices, his parents debated the meaning of the gold, a secret they had vowed to protect at all costs. "It's more than wealth," his father had said, his voice low and serious. "It's our future, our chance to break free from these chains." His mother had replied softly, as though afraid to speak too loudly in a room filled with ghosts, "But some treasures come with a price that can break the heart." Those words haunted Mark long after they faded into the night. They ignited a restless determination within him, a need to uncover the truth about the treasure and the hidden legacy that had defined his parents' lives. As he grew older, his innocent questions turned into pointed inquiries, and his once trusting eyes began to search for answers in places his parents would never think to look. By the time Mark reached his mid-teens, a quiet rebellion had taken root in his heart. He would spend hours wandering the dusty corners of their home, sifting through old letters and faded photographs, hoping to piece together the story of the gold and its true significance. In his mind, the treasure was no longer just a symbol of security or a means to an end, it had become an obsession, a key that might unlock the mysteries of his family's past. As the days passed, the rift between what was said and what was hidden grew ever wider. Mark's inner world became a battleground between the unyielding love he felt for his parents and the burning need to know the truth behind their guarded secret. With each unanswered question, his resolve hardened. In the silence of his room, beneath the soft glow of a single lamp, he vowed that he would one day discover everything, no matter the cost, no matter the consequences. Little did he know that his quiet quest for truth would set in motion events that would shatter the delicate balance of their lives, casting long shadows over the love that had once seemed unbreakable. In the heart of that modest home, where every whisper and every secret was etched into the very walls, Mark's journey toward a painful revelation had only just begun. As time marched on and the seasons cycled from the gentle renewal of spring to the brooding intensity of summer, the once harmonious household began to show the subtle signs of strain. Mark, now a young man on the threshold of adulthood, had grown increasingly perceptive of the invisible fissures that marred his family's facade of togetherness. Every whispered conversation, every furtive glance exchanged between his parents, fanned the flames of his growing suspicion and quiet anger. At the heart of these silent rifts was the unspoken secret of the hidden gold, a legacy that Thomas and Emily guarded as if it were both their salvation and their curse. The weight of the treasure's promise bore down on them in myriad ways. Thomas, though outwardly determined and hard-working, began to show signs of weariness. His eyes, once bright with hopeful dreams, now often held the shadow of worry. Each swing of his pickaxe in the mine seemed heavier, as if the burden of the secret threatened to crush him. And though Emily remained the gentle nurturer, even her warm smiles sometimes trembled with the hidden sorrow of a woman who carried too many unspoken truths. Mark, who had long nurtured a desire for the truth, felt increasingly alienated by this silent conspiracy. His youthful innocence had given way to a hardened resolve, and every day, he found himself drifting further from the comforting embrace of family love and deeper into the cold determination of a seeker of hidden truths. In the quiet hours of the night, he would lie awake, listening to the soft, rhythmic breathing of his parents, and wonder what terrible price the gold demanded in exchange for its promise of security. One humid summer night, when the cicadas' chorus filled the air and the dark windows of the house seemed to watch with knowing eyes, Mark found himself unable to quell the turmoil inside him any longer. Driven by both desperation and a sense of betrayal, he began to shadow his father's nightly routines. He would wait quietly outside the dim light of the living room, straining to catch snippets of conversation as his father retreated to a secluded corner of the house, a room filled with relics of a past that had long since lost its luster. In those hushed moments, Mark would see Thomas's eyes glaze over as he clutched a small worn ledger, a record of savings, plans, and dreams that were now tainted by the secret of the gold. Emily, too, became more withdrawn. Once a beacon of light in their modest home, she now carried an air of melancholy, as if the memories of a lost past and the burden of hidden promises weighed her down. Her laughter, once soft and reassuring, had grown scarce. She would often pause in the middle of her daily routines, cooking, tending to her garden, or even during moments of quiet conversation, lost in thought, her gaze distant and clouded by memories of what might have been. As the rift between parent and child widened, Mark's inner conflict deepened. On one hand, he clung desperately to the ideal of a loving family, but on the other, he was haunted by the conviction that something vital was being kept from him. He felt betrayed by the silence, tormented by the notion that his parents had chosen to hide a secret that might hold the key to their salvation. Every unanswered question, every furtive look exchanged between his mother and father, became a shard of glass in his heart. In the shadowed corridors of that old house, where the ticking of a battered clock measured out both time and loss, Mark's determination grew into an obsession. He began to meticulously document every strange occurrence, every half-heard word, convinced that the truth lay hidden within the fragments of whispered secrets. The once innocent curiosity that had marked his childhood had mutated into a burning need for clarity, a desire so fierce that it threatened to consume him. With each passing day, as the quiet conflicts deepened and the gentle fabric of family life tore ever further, Mark vowed to uncover the truth behind the secret of the gold. He believed that in doing so, he would not only reclaim his own identity but also finally mend the cracks in the foundation of a family built on love, hope, and now, a dangerous secret that promised to upend everything. As summer yielded to the brooding heaviness of late autumn, tragedy struck with a suddenness that left the small household reeling. The relentless toil in the mines, a life Thomas had known all too well, had long exacted its brutal toll. One fateful day, as a biting wind swept through the red clay roads and the sky darkened with the threat of an oncoming storm, Thomas failed to return home. Instead, word came swiftly and devastatingly: an accident in the mine had claimed his life. In the days that followed, the town was shrouded in a palpable grief. Neighbors and friends gathered in somber clusters, their murmurs heavy with disbelief and sorrow. For Emily, the loss was not merely the passing of a beloved husband, it was the shattering of a shared dream, the sudden collapse of the fragile promise of a secure future. Thomas's absence left an aching void, a silence so profound that even the steady hum of the mines seemed to echo with the sound of a heart broken beyond repair. Inside the modest home that once resonated with the hopeful laughter of a young couple, an oppressive stillness took hold. Emily moved like a ghost through the rooms, her once bright eyes now dimmed with sorrow. The cherished mementos of happier times, photographs, letters, and the simple trinkets that marked their shared journey, became painful relics of a love that could no longer ward off the encroaching darkness. For Mark, the loss of his father was a turning point that reshaped everything. The warmth of childhood gave way to the cold, hard reality of adult grief. In his heart, a deep-seated anger began to fester, a fury born not only of the sudden absence of the man he had admired but also of the secrets that now seemed more potent than ever. The quiet whispers of doubt that had haunted him for years now roared with unyielding intensity. He could no longer ignore the undercurrents of deception that ran through his family's history. In the wake of Thomas's death, the hidden secret of the gold assumed a new sinister significance. What had once been a symbol of hope and promise was now a source of bitter irony, a treasure that might have offered a path out of hardship but had instead become the root of untold sorrow. Emily, though devastated, clung to the secret as if it were a lifeline. She believed that if she could only protect the legacy they had begun to build, she might still honor the dreams Thomas had carried. Yet, every time she glanced at the small, unassuming chest where the ledger and the precious nugget were hidden, her heart ached with the knowledge that some promises demanded a terrible price. Mark's grief manifested in restless, sleepless nights. He would pace the creaking floors of the old house, his thoughts swirling around the mystery of his father's untimely demise and the burden of the secret that now threatened to unravel everything. The weight of unspoken words and half-forgotten promises pressed down on him, and with each passing day, his inner turmoil deepened. In the silent void of loss, he began to feel an overwhelming urge for retribution, not against the town or fate itself, but against the betrayal of trust that had kept him in the dark for so long. As autumn deepened and the chill in the air grew more biting, the once cohesive family was irrevocably split between memory and resentment. Emily's sorrow and determination to safeguard the legacy warred with Mark's burning need for truth. In the gloom of that long, sorrowful season, each member of the family was forced to confront the harsh reality that some secrets, once unearthed, could not be buried again. And as the winds howled outside and the old house shuddered with the weight of grief, Mark silently vowed that he would uncover the truth, no matter how painful, no matter how devastating its consequences might be. In the weeks following Thomas's tragic passing, the home that had once been a sanctuary of hope transformed into a crucible of silent torment and unresolved questions. Emily, consumed by grief, clung to the memory of her husband and the promise of a future they had both envisioned, a future now marred by the heavy burden of the secret they had fought so hard to protect. The gold, gleaming like a forbidden fruit in the back of an old wooden chest, took on a dual nature. It was a symbol of hope for a better tomorrow, yet it also became a bitter reminder of a promise that had demanded so much. For Mark, the loss of his father ignited a feverish determination. Every night, as the winds outside whispered like mournful spirits and the old floorboards creaked under the weight of memories, he pored over every scrap of information he could find. In the attic's dusty corners and behind locked drawers, he searched for clues, old letters, faded photographs, even the creased edges of a diary that once belonged to his father. Each fragment of history he uncovered was a piece of a puzzle that had haunted him for years. As days turned into weeks, Mark's obsession grew. He began to spend long hours alone in the dim light of his room, scribbling notes and diagrams, meticulously documenting every small detail that hinted at the true nature of the secret. What was once a quiet curiosity had become a consuming need. His thoughts revolved around the gold as if it were the sole key to unlocking the mystery of his father's death and the true cost of the hidden treasure. Yet with every new discovery came fresh wounds. Mark could not shake the feeling that his parents had deliberately kept him in the dark, their silence a betrayal that cut deeper than any loss. The trust he had once placed in their love now curdled into a bitter cocktail of anger, sorrow, and determination. In his heart, a dark resolve began to take shape, a promise that he would not let the secret remain buried, regardless of the price he might have to pay. Late at night, when the world outside lay silent beneath a blanket of darkness, Mark's inner turmoil reached its peak. In those moments, the old house seemed to breathe with memories of a happier past, only to recoil under the weight of painful truths. The ledger, the tiny gleaming nugget, and the whispered conversations between his mother and father, all these relics of a life once filled with hope became the focus of his relentless quest. Each page he turned, each hidden compartment he discovered, was a step deeper into a labyrinth of secrets that threatened to engulf him. Emily, though struggling with her own grief, sensed the growing distance between herself and her son. She recalled the days when Mark's laughter filled the corridors and his questions were met with gentle answers. Now, every probing glance and curt question from him felt like a dagger to her heart. She tried in vain to reassure him, to explain that some secrets were meant to be protected for the sake of the family's future. But Mark's eyes, once bright with the innocence of youth, had grown hard and unyielding, a mirror of the obsession that now ruled his thoughts. One particularly bitter evening, as a storm raged outside and the wind battered the windows, Mark confronted his mother in hushed, anguished tones. "Mama, why must you hide everything from me?" he demanded, his voice trembling with both fury and despair. "Why can't I have the truth? What is it that you and Daddy have been so desperate to protect?" Emily's eyes, red-rimmed and filled with sorrow, could offer only a silent, pained smile. She knew that the time for gentle reassurances had passed, that the secret, the golden secret, had already begun to corrode the fragile bonds of their family. In that stormy night's darkness, as the thunder rumbled like the beating of a giant's heart and the rain lashed at the old house, Mark resolved that he would no longer be kept in the dark. The cost of ignorance was far too high. With every fiber of his being, he vowed to unearth the truth, no matter how deeply it was buried, no matter how destructive its revelations might be. And so, with a determination born of grief and anger, he took his first irrevocable step into the abyss of secrets, setting in motion events that would forever alter the course of their lives. As winter slowly loosened its icy grip and early spring whispered of renewal, Mark's inner torment had reached a fever pitch. The secret of the gold, the silent promise that had both saved and cursed his family, was now an obsession that demanded resolution. In the depths of his troubled mind, a radical, dangerous plan began to take shape, one that would force the truth into the light, whether his mother wished it or not. For months, Mark had observed the subtle rituals that defined his mother's life. He remembered the delicate way Emily once prepared for her wedding day, a day marked not by grandeur but by quiet defiance and intimate hope. Though that sacred moment had long passed, its memory remained etched in her every gesture. In Mark's eyes, the answer lay hidden in the symbolism of that day, a day when promises were made and secrets were entrusted to the gentle rhythms of a shared future. Driven by a potent mix of grief, anger, and desperate longing for truth, Mark devised a plan that would blur the boundaries of memory and reality. He decided to recreate a wedding ceremony, a deception that would force his mother to relive the sacred vows of the past, and in doing so, compel her to reveal the long-guarded secret. His mind churned with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he craved the truth about the gold, about the legacy his father had left behind. On the other, he was tormented by the thought of betraying the only remaining remnant of a family he once believed to be whole. Quietly, with meticulous care, Mark set his plan in motion. He scoured the old family belongings for the dress that Emily had once worn on that humble wedding day, a gown as delicate and ethereal as the memory of a lost dream. Hidden in the back of an old wardrobe, carefully folded and preserved against the ravages of time, he found the garment and cradled it as if it were the key to unlocking the mysteries of his past. Slowly, he began to orchestrate the details of the deception, securing the ancient church on the outskirts of town where his parents had exchanged their vows, arranging for a handful of trusted acquaintances to act as witnesses, and even rehearsing every word of a ceremony that was part tribute, part confrontation. One cold morning, as a pale light seeped through frost-covered windows, Mark approached his mother with an offer that seemed both tender and incongruous. "Mama," he said softly, holding out the wedding dress with trembling hands, "Daddy wanted you to have this for your wedding day, so that you would always remember the promise you made." His voice was gentle, carefully laced with a nostalgia of a time when love had been unburdened by secrets. Emily's eyes, which had seen so much loss, filled with tears of both remembrance and confusion. For a moment, the old magic of that day flickered in her gaze, a spark of hope amid the darkness. As the days passed, Mark continued to prepare the grand illusion. He meticulously arranged the church's faded pews, polished the altar until it shone dimly in the weak light, and even rehearsed the role he would play in the ceremony. To him, this staged wedding was not merely an act of deception, it was a desperate gambit to shatter the silence that had long enveloped their home. In his heart, he believed that by forcing his mother to reenact the sacred ritual, the hidden truth would be laid bare, a truth that had been held captive by time and unspoken promises. Yet, even as the plan took shape, Mark's soul trembled with uncertainty. Each careful step he took toward the fateful day felt like a betrayal not only of his mother's trust but also of the very love that had sustained them. The dichotomy of his actions weighed on him. The longing to unearth the secret clashed violently with the guilt of using cherished memories as a weapon. Nonetheless, the path was set, and there could be no turning back. In his mind, the wedding would serve as the ultimate confrontation, a moment when past and present, love and greed, hope and despair would collide in a cataclysm of raw emotion and irrevocable consequence. The day arrived with a muted sunrise that painted the sky in somber shades of gray. The old church, a crumbling relic perched on the outskirts of town, stood as a silent witness to decades of whispered vows and forgotten dreams. Inside its time-worn walls, every wooden pew and stained-glass window seemed to hold the weight of history. For Mark, this was the stage of his final act, a carefully orchestrated ceremony designed to force the truth from the depths of a long-held secret. Emily awoke that morning with a heavy heart, her body frail yet determined. The letter Mark had left on her bedside table, along with the gentle insistence of his words, stirred in her a bittersweet anticipation. "Today," he had whispered, "today is the day we remember, so that the past may guide us to the truth." Clad in the delicate wedding dress from a lifetime ago, Emily felt as though she were stepping into a dream, a reverie that had once been filled with promise. Her trembling fingers caressed the fabric as she recalled the soft laughter and tender glances of a bygone era, a time when hope was a vibrant flame in her heart. Outside, the muted voices of a handful of loyal friends and neighbors gathered in reverent silence. They were unaware of the turbulent storm that lay beneath the surface of this sacred day, a storm that would soon upend everything they thought they knew about love and loyalty. Mark, dressed in formal attire that betrayed none of the turmoil within, took his place at the altar. His eyes, once filled with the innocent trust of youth, now shone with a hardened resolve born of years of longing and unspoken pain. As the pastor's gentle voice began the ceremony, The atmosphere was heavy with expectation. Each word of the ritual, each prayer, each pledge, seemed to echo with the resonance of a memory too profound to forget. Emily's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she slowly advanced down the aisle, her steps tentative yet resolute. With every measured stride, the air thickened with the weight of secrets and unspoken truths. At the altar, Mark stood with his head bowed and hands clenched in silent determination. The pastor's inquiry, "Do you pledge your heart to carry their legacy?" hung in the charged air, a question that seemed to demand not only affirmation but also the surrender of a lifetime of hidden pain. In a voice that cracked under the strain of suppressed emotion, Mark whispered, "I do." For a fleeting moment, the ritual appeared to bridge the chasm between memory and the present. But then, in a heartbeat, the fragile veneer of reconciliation began to shatter. As the ceremony progressed, the tension reached its breaking point. With trembling hands, Emily turned toward Mark, her eyes searching his for the warmth and honesty that had once defined their relationship. Instead, she found only a cold determination, a gaze that seemed to weigh every past transgression. In that fateful moment, the carefully constructed illusion of the ceremony dissolved into a torrent of raw, unfiltered emotion. Her voice, quivering with both sorrow and disbelief, broke the fragile silence. "My son, why have you brought me here?"
The question reverberate trug se ancient sanctuary, as if awakening long-dormant ghosts of love and regret.
Mark's face contorted with a mix of anguish and defiance. "Mama," he began, his tone faltering as the dam of his pent-up despair broke, "I needed to know the truth. I needed to understand the secret you and Daddy guarded so fiercely." The congregation, caught in the grip of the unfolding tragedy, listened in horrified silence as the truth, long buried beneath layers of silence and longing, threatened to erupt into chaos. In that charged moment at the altar, as stained glass light danced on shattered dreams and the echoes of the past mingled with the present, everything began to crumble. Emily's eyes filled with tears as the realization dawned that the ceremony was not a celebration of love but a stage for betrayal, a betrayal that cut deeper than any wound inflicted by time. With a trembling voice, she whispered, "This was never meant to be. You never had to do this for me." The words, laden with sorrow and regret, hung in the air like a curse. As the pastor's voice faltered and the assembled witnesses recoiled in stunned disbelief, the sanctuary became a crucible of shattered promises and unhealed wounds. The sacred space, once hallowed by the gentle power of love, now resonated with the piercing sound of a truth laid bare, a truth that would forever alter the hearts of all who bore witness to that ill-fated ceremony. In the aftermath of the catastrophic ceremony, the ancient church was suffused with a heavy, choking silence. The once sacred space, which had borne witness to the tender exchange of vows and the hopeful promise of a shared future, now reverberated with the echoes of heartbreak and betrayal. Emily, standing at the altar with trembling hands, was caught in a limbo between the past and a future now irreparably shattered. Her eyes, still glistening with tears, searched the faces of the assembled witnesses for an answer, some flicker of understanding, some solace in the shared grief, but found only cold, accusing stares. Mark, overcome by the gravity of his own actions, sank to his knees as the weight of his deception bore down upon him. The pastor's solemn voice, filled with sorrow and reproach, rang out in the hushed chamber, "You used your mother's love to chase a fortune." Those words, sharp and unforgiving, sliced through the heavy silence and shattered the brittle remnants of trust that had once bound this family together. In that moment, the sanctity of the ritual was obliterated by the raw, unfiltered anguish of a son who had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. As the congregation began to disperse, each person retreating into their own private sorrow and scandal, Emily crumpled into Mark's arms. Her soft, fading murmurs of "Mama, my sweet boy," blended with the whispered reproaches of the pastor and the distant echoes of a once beautiful promise. For Mark, the collapse of the ceremony was both a moment of horrifying revelation and a crushing indictment of his own inner torment.
"Mama."
"Mama, he stammered, his voice breaking as he tried to justify the unthinkable act that had led them here. But even as he uttered those fractured words, he felt within him something irreparably broken, a chasm of guilt and regret that would forever mark his soul. In that tortured instant, the love that had once been the lifeblood of their family lay in ruins, replaced by a bitter legacy of lies and shattered dreams. Emily's whispered accusation, laden with the sorrow of a lifetime, cut deep. "You never had to do this for me." The words echoed through the ruined sanctuary, a final desperate plea for forgiveness that could never be granted. Outside, as the cold light of day crept through the stained glass windows, the remnants of the ceremony stood as a silent testament to a betrayal so profound that even the heavens seemed to mourn. The once revered altar now bore the weight of lost trust and the scars of an act that had defiled the sacred bond between mother and son. Mark's heart, once filled with the bright promise of youth, now lay heavy with remorse and anguish. His trembling fingers clutched the remnants of the wedding letter, an artifact of deceit and regret, while his eyes, red-rimmed and vacant, gazed upon the empty pews as if seeking absolution in their silent rows. As the final echoes of the pastor's lament faded into an oppressive stillness, Mark felt the crushing realization that his quest for truth had led him down a path of irrevocable destruction. The secret that had been buried so deep was now laid bare, exposing not only the hidden fortune beneath the earth but also the darkness that resided within his own soul. In that shattering moment, as the light of hope was extinguished by the weight of betrayal, the bond between mother and son was left fractured beyond repair, a wound that time, no matter how gently it might attempt to heal, could never fully mend. In the weeks that followed the catastrophic ceremony, the once vibrant home that had sheltered a family built on love and hope transformed into a mausoleum of sorrow and regret. The old wooden house, with its creaking floors and faded portraits, seemed to mourn the loss of what once was, a legacy of trust, nurtured over a lifetime, now irretrievably shattered. Mark wandered its empty halls like a lost soul, burdened by the crushing weight of his own guilt and the knowledge that his desperate quest had robbed him of everything he had once held dear. Every room in the house held a memory, a laughter shared in brighter days, a soft word of comfort in times of pain. But now, those memories were tainted by the bitter aftermath of a deception that had destroyed the sacred bond between mother and son. Emily's absence was a constant, aching void that echoed in every silent corner. In the quiet of the early morning, when the first hints of dawn crept through the dusty windows, Mark would find himself pausing in a state of numb disbelief, the bitter taste of regret mingling with the chill of the morning air. One day, as Mark roamed the desolate grounds of the house, his fingers brushed against a small, weathered envelope that lay sealed with faded ink, a letter written in his father's hand. With trembling hands and a heart heavy with sorrow, he opened it and read the words that had been left as a final testament. "My dearest Emily," it began, a voice from a past long lost. "If you are reading this, then I am gone, and I have left you the weight of my love and the burden of a secret I swore to keep." Each word was a bittersweet reminder of the promise that had been made and the cost at which it had come. In that moment, Mark understood that the treasure his father had discovered was not meant to be a key to liberation, but a curse that had devoured their legacy piece by piece. The letter went on, urging Emily to forgive, to find solace in the memories of love rather than the allure of material wealth. Yet, as Mark read those final lines, he felt the crushing truth of his actions. His own greed and thirst for the forbidden knowledge had irreparably severed the bond between them. The realization came crashing down like the final toll of a death knell. He sank to his knees in the center of the empty house, the echo of his father's words mingling with the silent sobs that tore from his soul. Outside, the world moved on indifferently. Neighbors whispered of the tragedy that had befallen the family, a scandal too profound for the dusty lanes of their small town. The old church, once the site of sacred vows and shared dreams, now stood as a stark reminder of the ruin wrought by ambition and betrayal. Mark could no longer escape the relentless judgment of his own conscience, nor the unforgiving stares of those who had once called him one of their own. In the final hours of a cold gray day, as the last vestiges of light faded into the oppressive dusk, Mark gathered what little remained of his shattered dignity. With the weight of a ruined legacy anchoring his every step, he left the house, a crumbling monument to a love that had been twisted into something unrecognizable. Each footfall carried the bitter refrain of a truth that could never be undone, that in the pursuit of forbidden knowledge and the promise of ill-gotten wealth, he had sacrificed the only thing that had ever truly mattered. And so, as the long night swallowed him and the distant sound of the wind whispered through barren trees, Mark walked on, a solitary figure burdened by regret, haunted by the echoes of a past that would forever remain beyond redemption. The legacy of his father's love, the gentle guidance of his mother's nurturing spirit, and the dark secret that had devoured their lives all merged into a single unyielding truth. Some treasures are too costly to claim, and some promises, once broken, can never be restored. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Your support means the world and helps keep these stories coming. See you in the next one.